Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking about politics. This is the finished look. We'll get into it. I just want to let you guys know that this is going to be a little more informational. This is an opinion piece. There are facts that I use, but if you don't want to get political, don't watch this. If you do want to get political, please watch this. Thanks guys. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Colton with BearScareBeauty, back again. And today we're just going to be talking a little bit, and I'm just going to do something on my face. And we're going to talk about things that not everybody's going to be comfortable with or agree with me on, and that's fine. And I'm going to be using some products that I haven't used in a while, and then some of the newer Hourglass products that I'm still testing out. I'm going to be using the ABH Norvina III palette. This is something that I bought and I was excited for it, and I haven't really reached for it that much, so I guess what I'm saying is I'm doing like a posthumous review of this to see what I really think, because my opinion has changed. I'm also going to be doing it in a different way than I have been. I saw the Instagram, TikTok thing of the model triangle, so I'm going to be trying that. I don't really like doing makeup that way. It looks good on camera, but not in person. So I'm just gonna see what I think about it in camera, and then also give you my thoughts about it in person. I've already washed, moisturized, and dried, so I'm just gonna get in with foundation. That's gonna be the base, you know, all that good stuff. Gonna be using the Hourglass Vanish in Cream. Just gonna go ahead and blend that in. Now, I realize right now that I might have kind of a weird, somber tone, and I do. It's a little bit of a weird day. So it is the day where they have announced, or rather called, the president-elect as Joe Biden, which I am happy about. I am very glad that the United States, as a majority, voted Trump out, because he is not only a deplorable human being, but also has been really propagating and opening America up to the idea of fascist rhetoric being acceptable, and we have definitely seen some consequences because of that. So, I mean, in this country, we already have people that are very open to the idea of fascism, and already kind of align with the ideas of fascism. So let's talk about what fascism is. So fascism is defined, and now keep in mind I am reading this off of Wikipedia, however this is the kind of general understanding and accepted understanding of what fascism is. So it's defined as a form of far-right authoritarian ultranationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society and of the economy, which came to prominence in the early 20th century in Europe. So essentially what that is it's the furthest right on the political spectrum, and it is past authoritarian. It's a little more complicated than just what that is. One of the kind of main ideas behind fostering fascism in anywhere is creating an enemy. And if you can create an enemy and label them as an enemy of the state, then anything you do to that enemy is then justified by the state, so people don't really have to think or feel bad about it. As we see in the Third Reich, they say that they were just following orders. Well, if the orders say that it's okay, then it must be okay. So that's part of it. Now, to create an enemy like that, they have to be simultaneously everywhere, but nowhere. They have to be this mysterious, ethereal being that nobody can touch, but then they also have to be people that you can point at and identify in public. They have to be the strongest force within your country that you're opposing, while simultaneously being weak enough that you can crush them without little opposition. That is how you create the perfect enemy for fascism to breed against. Now I'm going to take some Tarte Shape Tape Concealer, and we're going to do the weird triangle thing, so I'm just going to, oh god, this is so much. here, and here, here, and I am going to do a little bit here because I don't put foundation up there. And then they have it across the forehead, a little bit right there. This is so weird looking, and then I'm going to do some right there. Take my little Delium 778 BDHD Phase 3 brush, start blending this out. I'm going to go back over with the foundation brush and see if I can maybe tone this down a little bit, because that is super intense. So now you might be asking yourself, well, why am I making this video, or why am I talking about this today? Because Joe Biden was elected. Well, he was called. He was called to election, meaning that mainly the Associated Press, who has been kind of a poll counter for a very long time in this country, has called the states, giving him enough votes, electoral votes, to say that he is the President of the United States, or President-elect. Now, the current president, who will remain unnamed currently, has said he's seeking legal action against this to try to stop it, and claiming he is the rightful winner, though the popular vote has said otherwise. So that right there would be an indication of potential fascism or fascist actions, because he is attempting to subvert the will of the American people for his own good and his own profit. And that ultimately is what fascism is about: power. Now, I did say it was a far right-leaning idea or ideology. This is true. That's not to say all people on the right are fascists or believe in fascism. It just happens to be the further right on the political compass you are, the more authoritarian, the furthest right being fascism, whereas the further left is generally communism or anarchy, the farthest left. That's just how political compasses work. Now, the easiest targets for fascism to make enemies of are minority groups. And in the US, minority groups would be BIPOC people, LGBT people, the disabled, and people that don't align themselves with the current right-wing ideology. This concerns me because I am LGBT, and many of my friends are BIPOC, LGBT, and or disabled. So, if we're deemed enemies of the states for simply being who we are, and we're being billed as degenerates leading to the downfall of society, we are vulnerable. Even though Biden is still president, the last 4 years have shown that we are not immune to the potential of fascism. And in fact, there are many in this country that believe that leaning in that direction is the correct way we should go. I'm just going to take the Hourglass setting powder now. I've used this powder quite a few times, and I do actually really like it, and I didn't want to like it because it's expensive, but I do really like it. Just taking some on the Delium 974 tapered powder brush. I'm going to start by going right under the eyes, even though this is the most matte concealer you'll ever use in your life. And then just the nose, and then just a light dusting everywhere else. This does have a really nice luminosity to it, which I really like. It has some very fine pearl in it, which you can actually see. It like gets on the cap, and if you kind of rub over it on the cap, you see that it has a very like fine pearl and sheen to it. So This is definitely different than the Maybelline Fit Me powder in like formula, but as for like milling, I don't think it's that much different. They feel virtually identical, but it's most certainly not the same formula. So, I mean, okay, I understand this look. It gives a nice like center to the face, and it really kind of brings it out and balances it. I understand this look for like Instagram photos, but it's not necessarily an everyday look you could really get away with, especially because, like, in person, I look nuts. I look absolutely nuts. Now I'm going to use the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Bronzer. This is in the shade Diffused Bronze Light. Going to take this on my little Delium 959 powdered blending brush. It's just a nice thick, dense, fluffy brush. And while I'm doing this, let's talk a little bit about nationalism and white nationalism. So, white nationalism is not, basically not as complicated as it sounds. It's essentially the idea that the white race deserves its own nation, or ethno-state, as some people might call it, and some other ideas that might suggest this, also known as dog whistles, and that would be something that not everybody would immediately recognize as something that's, you know, fascist, neo-Nazi, nationalism, things like that. Dog whistles do go both ways, by the way. A dog whistle is just something normal people wouldn't immediately recognize, but the people that are versed in this would, because it's a call to them specifically. So some of the dog whistles that might suggest things like white nationalism or nationalism would be something like saying, preserving the heritage of Western civilization. If you research politics or anything like that at all, Western civilization is essentially white civilization. Canada, America, England, Germany, Italy, those are all considered Western civilization, even Russia to some extent, and Japan to some extent. Places where it is majority white. Western civilization does not necessarily mean the Western world. The Western world is white. That's basically all it means. Now, preserving the heritage of Western civilization would essentially saying preserving the ideas of white people. That's it. This is not coming from a place of white guilt either. I really don't have white guilt or anything like that, but I can recognize that I have inherent privileges that other people don't because of my skin color. That's something that is just true and factual. It's not that hard to understand. Now, the term ethno-state is something that I'm not really going to spend too much time on because it's basically the same thing. It's an ethnicity state. Saying something like a Western civilization or, you know, a pure ethno-state or white ethno-state is saying like, oh, well, white people deserve a place that's all their own. That's it. That's all it is. So whenever you hear something like that, that is basically or literally what people are saying. Now, this is a dangerous ideology, especially in America, because we have this idea, or some people have this idea, that America is a melting pot, that everybody is welcome here, can exist here, things of that nature. It's really not true. We see that time and time again, that the American people have a major disdain for people that they don't believe are American. By the way, this video is not me trying to shame anybody, anything like that. I am not an expert. I have no formal education in this. This is all just research I've done and people I've seen talk about this, listen to, mostly opinions that I agree with, right? Everybody's going to have their bias on things like this. I'm just talking because this is currently an important subject in my country and to me. So I'm going to take the Delium Tools 960 Precision Blush Brush. And this is the Hourglass in Diffused Heat Blush. It's like pinky coral. And I like to keep my blush back a little further, like right here. So let's talk a little bit about disinformation and how that can lead to a failed state. So the dictionary definition of failed state: a state whose political or economic system has become so weak that the government is no longer in control. Now, how can disinformation play a part in that? Well, simply the first part. If there is enough misinformation being spread about current policies, political pundits, or even areas in the United States, if people essentially cut off economic process and progress in some areas of the United States through constant smear campaigns, misinformation, and dissuading people from going there, that can lead to a failed state. And either the government or the people have to step in, fill the void of that, and create a new state. Now, who steps in to do that is also important, because the people spreading misinformation about these have an agenda to fill. Now, some ways to spot misinformation and disinformation. Simply look at your source. Even if you believe the source and what they're saying, read into the articles that they're talking about. Look at the data that they're citing. Make sure it matches what they're saying. Because if they have no data to support what they're saying, then it's simply just anecdotal evidence and an opinion piece. Their opinion does not need to be based in fact for them to spread it publicly. Now that I'm all blushed up, see, this powder and the blush and the bronzer really do a lot to help bring some luminosity back, because this concealer is so dry looking. Unbelievably dry looking. Tremendously dry looking. I'm just bringing you guys in a little closer. Now, things to watch for, especially when you're researching, listening to anything political, or even just listening to kind of idle political talk show hosts. You need to make sure that what they are talking about has been peer-reviewed, or the data that they're citing has been peer-reviewed. Many people have the idea that there's no such thing as a scholarly source when they're talking about opinion pieces, or they might try to fight you and ask, well, what is a scholarly source? What is a verifiable source? Let's talk about historians for a little bit. A verifiable source for a historian: historians live and die by their reputation. A lot of times in history, we can't go back and look into like the date in history and be a fly on the wall and be like, oh, this person really did say that, or oh, they did write this, things like that. So historians live or die by their reputation. If you're looking at a paper, look who wrote it. If you look into them and they are shamed or discredited constantly, the source might not be reliable. If you look into their source, they seem well credited, things of that nature, look into another source. Make sure that what one says corroborates what the other says. Even do that with sources that don't look scholarly, just to make sure. If you can find an average of enough sources saying the same thing, fairly good chance that it might be true, as long as the people discussing it are credible. Now, scientific data and hard facts, those are easy to find credible. Peer-reviewed research, that's all you need to find. Peer-reviewed research, look for multiple sources. If an experiment can be done once, it can be done a second, third, fourth, and fifth time and have the exact same outcome. That's how we know that it's consistent, credible, and factual. I'm going to contour. This is going to be the 944 tapered contour brush, and I am using a NYX contour palette that I have had forever that they don't make anymore, and I'm very sad because it's very good. And I'm just going to kind of keep it lower than the bronzer. I like to start back a little bit and then just dig it into the hollows a little bit and then blend upwards. I'm going to take the same brush that I blended the concealer out with. I'm going to take the back edge of that and I'm going to contour the nose gently. Gently. I'm gonna take it up, like, right into the brow. It's a little harsh right there, so I'm gonna stamp over it some of the leftover concealer. And now, further into this video, or rather right now, I just want to say that this is in fact my opinion. I am not citing sources or facts because I am not talking about evidence or specific events. These are just facts of what things are, right? What fascism is, what is happening in America right now, things of that nature. And some people think, well, oh, I'm gonna be generous here and say, oh, you're an influencer, you shouldn't be talking about politics. That is absolutely wrong. If you have a platform to talk about something you believe, you should use it. I think that goes both ways for people on the right and people on the left. No matter how extreme you are, you have the right to express your opinion. Totally fine with that. Now, let's talk about expressing your opinion. I'm going to jump into some contour. This is the Calypso from the company Luna by Luna, one of my favorite. It's like a purpley gray one. It looks great on my dead boy skin. Taking my big, delicious 991 powder fan. It's so thick. Thick. So where were we? Right, expressing your opinion. Recently, there have been a deluge of people getting banned from things like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and other places where you can express your opinion. Once again, this goes on both sides. No matter which side you're on, you can violate terms of service. Now, a violation of terms of service might be a little vague sometimes. However, if you are intentionally wishing hurt, death, or suggestions of violence or inciting violence, most of the time you're breaking terms of service on a website and you will be removed from it. Now, people say that this is a violation of freedom of speech. I'm going to have to disagree. While you have your right to freedom of speech in America, you do not have your right to freedom of speech on a private platform. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, these are all in fact private platforms. Private capital, if you will. And in a capitalist society, that's very important because in capitalism, the means to create capital are owned privately or are able to be owned privately, not socially by the government or by the workers that work there, privately. And as a private company, you have the right to refuse service to anybody for any reason. There have been some cases where this may not be the case, such as discrimination, but this isn't discrimination. They're not being discriminated against. You do not have the right to a platform for freedom of speech. You may just express your opinion. Does that make sense? Just highlighting the Cupid's bow a little bit. A little bit. Boom. We are greasy and gleaming. I'm gonna go like whatever's left on the brush and just gently sweep it under the eyes. Not because it really highlights it, but it just gives it a better gleam. Some people might take issue with me saying that, but it's just the truth. That's how it is in America. If we are a capitalist society, we function on the idea that private capital can be owned. If a business is private, you do not always have the right to use that business. Some people say that this shouldn't be the case with things like Twitter or Facebook because they have such a massive reach and are so widely used. Well, that's because they have a monopoly. When you have a monopoly, the government generally steps in and busts a monopoly apart, much like they did in the 90s when Microsoft had to pay Apple because they were going under, and Microsoft had a massive monopoly in the computer field. This hasn't happened with Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook yet, I'm assuming because they're kind of skirting around it with the fact that internet forums exist and things of that nature, so they don't have a monopoly on commentary or voice on the internet, but in these specific instances, I personally believe they do. We're gonna move on to eyes. Just taking my normal NYX Proof It, slathering that up on my lids. So, to wrap up my soapboxing, and then we're just going to finish out with the eyes, and I'm just going to talk about normal life stuff. We need to be more conscious of what we're saying, who we're saying it to. If you are on the left side like I am, we need to learn what political optics are and implement them. Optics would be things such as the wording and people and policies that you choose to talk about publicly and how they're perceived by the people listening or watching you. So, it always seems better if you are cool, calm, and collected when doing a debate with somebody, rather than emotional, loud, and rash, because that makes you seem unprofessional. It makes you seem like you don't necessarily know what you're talking about, or you're being reactive to being attacked when the other person might be cool, calm, and collected, so they don't visually have the optics that they're attacking you. Another thing I believe we need to stop doing is purity testing. And I have a lot of opinions on this. I usually call it woker than thou. Purity testing is essentially that. You push the envelope for how pure or how woke somebody is, and if they don't meet up to your standards, you publicly blast them. And this creates the idea that the party has a massive divide in itself. It makes it look like an easier target, as well makes it less appealing to those on the outside. If you have somebody that's, relatively centrist Republican, looking at some ideas from the left, because there can be centrist liberals, there can be centrist Republicans, libertarians, all that good stuff. And even if you're far left or far right, there are going to be policies of the other party that you may agree with. Now, what seems more attractive when you're looking at policies? A party that has a lot of infighting, so when you're researching about these policies, there are going to be a lot of differing opinions and there might be a lot of fighting about it. Or one that has a general unified opinion on it, even if there is a little bit of discourse, as long as it looks civil, you're going to tend to agree with that more. So that would be optics and purity testing, and that's something that 2021 through 2024, I think the left-leaning party really needs to get its shit together on. Alright, well, now that we're done with that topic, we're just going to go on to the eyes. Once again, going to be using the Norvina III. So yeah, as some as y'all can tell, the election has been stressful. I'm going to start with a 776 Stellium Tools blending brush and dip into A3. It's like a light browny orange. And I'm going to start by working this into the crease and just kind of blending it back and forwards and up. So, like I said, I'm going to do kind of a posthumous review of this palette. It is $60, so it's much cheaper per shade than any of the other ABH palettes. That being said, you can kind of tell. A lot of these don't blend as well as some of the smaller and more expensive ABH palettes, like the Modern Renaissance palette. This is definitely not on par with that. The shimmers are all just glitters, which I'm not a fan of. I do not like the shimmers in this palette at all, any way, shape, or form. The mattes are also very hit or miss. Now, this isn't exactly a cheap palette. It is $60, depending on where you live, plus tax. I wouldn't say it's a bad palette, but it does not live up to the expectations that some might have when they hear Anastasia Beverly Hills. Now, aside from any brand controversies, we're not here to talk about that today. We're mainly just talking about performance. Price to performance, I think this is a decent palette. There are some mattes, specifically the darker purple mattes, and every single green in this palette doesn't perform that well. If we remove that, you still have about 10 shades that I think perform really well. That being said, if you're going to get 10 shades that perform well and about another 8-9 shades that perform just okay, and then the 7 shimmers, that I detest, this palette is not worth it. I would not repurchase it at all. I don't necessarily have buyer's remorse because I will continue to use it. It has a lot of pretty colors that I like, but overall, I don't think this is worth it. Now, as always, I pretty much have to blend that all the way up to my brow. And my roommate's playing his guitar in the other room, and now he got some Green Day stuck in my head. What a bastard. The nerve of some people being good at instruments. I'm going to dip into C2. This is on a 783 small tapered blending brush. It's like a watermelon red, almost. I'm going to try to tuck this as close to into the crease as I can without bleeding up too much. Now, there is something to be said about the blendability of these shades. They do blend fairly well. It's not necessarily an effortless blend, and some of them, like the darker shades, specifically the kind of more plummy shades, are pretty patchy. But as far as the oranges, this red, and then the brown oranges go, they blend pretty well. So I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad about that. These are fairly pretty colors too. They're pretty well pigmented. It's just not what you would expect from a brand with the prestige of ABH behind it. None of them are really powdery, none of them have a lot of fallout either, so that is nice. Little trick to people with hooded eyes, don't go down to the lower lash line like people without hooded eyes do. Cut it off if you're doing a wing, just slightly above your top lash line, and it just looks a lot better. See, that's pretty color combo. It's a lot more impactful on camera than it is in person too, which is interesting. I'm just gonna blend out the edge a little bit with some more of that A3, just because I like to see a little bit of that transition shade peek up. And once again, on my eyes, that gets lost real quick like. This is the 781, oh god, the 781 crease brush from Delian Tools. And I'm going to dip into the shade E2. This is one of the patchier shades that I was talking about, but I'm going to see how it goes under this red, or rather over the red. It's a deeper plum shade, and I'm just going to try to concentrate it on the outside. It's doing nothing. Okay. It's not what I wanted. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's something. Oh no. See, this is the issue I've been having with this palette. There are just some shades that are a nothing sandwich, even though they're totally what I would gravitate towards, the deeper, grungier, goth GF shades. I feel like I use that term a lot, and there have been some people that just totally don't get it. Goth GF is goth girlfriend, right? It meme, comrade, it meme. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see a difference, but that's what we're gonna do. I can't live with that. I'm gonna take like a lot, and I'm gonna stamp it on there. See, it's, I guess it's showing up, but it's just like it's not the same color at all that it is in the pan, and it's definitely not as impactful as I would like it to be. And now, since these are borderline loose glitters, I'm just going to take the only one that I really like, which is D5. It's like this gold one. Now see, God, it looks nice on the finger. It swatches relatively well, but it doesn't look like that on the eye. Taking this, and I'm gonna tap it right on the center, and then kind of work it towards the outer edge. I got these big Shrek ogre fingers, so you know. And no matter what I do, this is gonna transfer all the way up to my eyebrow, so I'm just quitting there. Gonna go ahead and take the 774 large shader brush. It's just your average eyeshadow brush. I'm gonna dip into a little bit of B5. This is like the tiny bit darker shade of A3, and I'm just going to smoke out the lower lash line a little bit, just a nice press in, and then gentle smokies. Sorry, I hunch so much during these videos. I wish I could say I didn't do that otherwise, but I do. I work at a computer for a living now, so I am definitely getting nerd neck. I'm turning into the hunch bunch. If anybody gets that reference, please comment down below because I love you for it. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other eye. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Oh my god. I think this is the most symmetrical I've ever gotten my eyes on this goddamn channel. My forehead looks like a mess. Probably not on camera, but in real life, it's bad. But, yeah, for those of you who don't know, this eye droops lower and is a little bit lazy. This eye is not, so... Meh, meh, meh. Oh, I'm so itchy. Oh my god. So itchy. Okay, gonna do my brows. I'm gonna fast forward through this shit in post, so... I am just not gonna talk. Or, I just might, not show this on camera. But y'all know that I'm going to be using the Hourglass Micro Brow Kajigger, and then use some of the fiber gel. So, yeah. Wow, so this brow is a bloodbath. This one's perfect. Okay, well, that's as good as the brows are gonna get. I lied. Taking the fiber gel. I'm still really torn on the fiber gel, whether or not it does anything for me. Because I'll definitely see, like, fibers being deposited, but then I'm like, but did that do anything? I don't know. IDK, my BFF gel. I'm going to torture my sight orbs real quick. And I'm going to use the Hourglass Extreme Lash Mascara. I do really like this wand. And for lips, I'm going to take the Clariche from Maybelline Intouchable Taupe. Okay, and this is the final look. What do we think? How do we feel? I'm actually not mad at like this thing we got going on, but it looks great on camera. In person, no. I look like I'm the Crypt Keeper made out of leather. It's not great. I think my lips look really good today, though. So yeah, I'll do our narcissistic montage. Okay guys, what do we think? How we feel? Yeah, so that got really political earlier. I'm not sorry. Yeah, so this is Colton with BearScareBeauty. Once again, thank you guys for watching my videos. Subscribe down below. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, BearScareBeauty, same way it's spelled here. It'd mean a lot. Hopefully you guys have a great day, week, month, or year. And I love you, my little Scarecubs. Take care. Bye.